This is a new episode of Don't Be a Man About It, and my today's guest is Amando Brown, the Executive Director of BESTution and an Executive Coach. Before we go deeper, Amando, hi.
Hi, Rayhaf, how are you? Firstly, I've got to say to everyone and to yourself, Happy New Year.
Happy New
Um,
Year. Thank you.
I think everyone's been waiting for 2020 to conclude so we could start afresh, but it isn't all that, it's not all plain sailing, but we're here and we've got to look positively, think positively to make things happen the way we want them to. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for a
100%.
lovely introduction.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So, would you like to add anything about a very brief background on who you are, who do you serve?
Right. Okay. So as Ray has kindly put, I'm an executive coach and the executive director of BESTution Limited, which has been going now for about 3, 4 years. And we cater for children, various background, children from the looked after care system, children who have mental health issues, children who've got behavioural problems, children who are disengaged from education, and children who are in a transitional period. Maybe they've moved from one location to another and they just need that support. And also children who just need an added bit of a push. And I'm also a transformational coach. So I look at people, see where they're at right now, and look at the things that they would like to explore and help them in that process of transforming themselves to be the best version of themselves. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I'm going to go deeper on that, but I have to ask you the question. How is your heart doing today?
My heart. Wow. Okay. My heart is right now. My heart is full of joy, because I'm speaking to someone who completely understands, and you've got a vested interest in something that's quite dear to my heart. Because I think that men are overlooked so often. Okay, and men aren't, I suppose, many times because we're men, we're never allowed to be vulnerable. It's not, you never put the two together, men and strength, men and being forward thinking, doing crazy things, adventurous things, but men and vulnerability are so far apart. And I think that yeah, just focused on how vulnerable men are in so many different ways actually. So the time when they've got to be strong, they're also vulnerable. The time when they've got to be a father, but they're also vulnerable. The time when they've got to be a strong parent or a leader, but that vulnerability always shows up. And what happens is often we stifle it. And what you do, Rahaf, is allow men to connect with that sort of sensitive, vulnerable side of themselves that's really critical to growth.
Thank you. Thank you, Amando. Yes. I do believe that not I do believe, I do hope that one day we would reach a point where we start speaking the language of humanity instead of genders. But until
Yeah,
that day comes, people or our society and our community, our children, everyone needs to understand that women and men are equal when it comes to mental
yeah,
health issues, when it comes to
yeah,
emotions, when it comes to our thoughts patterns. Each one of us has the right to cry, to express, and to just release our emotions. So thank you for that. I
you
appreciate
know,
that you highlighted this. Yes, please go ahead.
yeah. Some years ago, I remember speaking to a mentor of mine. It's got to be about 10 years ago, and he said, "You know, the strength of a true man when he's brought to tears and he allows
Oh,
himself to actually cry, because that takes strength and courage." So I identify with that, and I think that's, yeah, the idea of men and women being equal. Absolutely, we do different things, but I couldn't survive without a woman, and I'm sure a woman couldn't survive without me or a man. So we need each other. It's so important, so important. So yeah, we just need to value each other and the qualities that we each bring, you know. So
Amen to that. So, Amando, um, I want to thank you again for being open and to accept to share your story on Don't Be a Man
yeah,
About It. I know that you have been through a lot of obstacles, and I know that you have been, not you have been, you have struggled with dealing with diversity, dealing with mental health issues, dealing with the pressures that were on you from everything and everyone around you. And
yeah.
needless to say that thanks to those struggles, it brought you to be the man, the remarkable man that you are today. But
Oh,
take us back. What's your story and how how much did it affect Amando today?
right. Okay. Well, look, you know what? You the way you describe me is absolutely brilliant. Honestly, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Um,
Just
but I wasn't always. Sorry.
just stating facts.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well, I wasn't always an executive director or executive coach. Um, I started my journey as a policeman, and I was in the police for about, I think in total 9 years or 8.5 years. And I remember starting the police, and it was basically the career of my dream. I really always wanted to be a policeman, and I remember starting and realizing that it wasn't quite what I thought it was, because there were real challenges. So um, I saw racism. I saw discrimination between, the genders. So I saw people who were afraid to sort of identify with who they felt they were, and their choices of their partners. So lots of different things I experienced, but the biggest impact for me was when I was leaving work. It was Friday, the 13th of March, 1998, and it's seared in my brain. It was Friday the 13th. Does that mean anything to you, Rahaf? I don't know if it does. Um,
Friday
does it?
13th?
The 13th,
Well,
Friday the
I know that
13th.
it should be a superstitious number.
Yeah, well, I'm not really superstitious, but it was Friday the 13th,
I
and
just
I've
need odd
been,
numbers, that's it.
yeah. And the interesting thing is, normally if it's Friday the 13th, lots of people say, well, don't leave your house, just stay at home. Well, I was at work, and I think I was doing a 10 till 2 shift. I remember my colleague, at the end of the shift, he said to me, look, do you know what, all we need to do now is get home, because everything has gone so smoothly. There were no issues, no problems at all. It was a really nice day. And I said, well, yeah, all we've got to do is get home. I got on my motorbike, and about 2 minutes outside of the station, I was hit by a car which was driving the wrong way down a one-way street. It hit me head on. It catapulted me 50 feet height and distance. On impact, it broke my left wrist. And then when I landed, I uh, broke my left wrist in the same place again. It was a fracture dislocation, and then also damaged my back. Um, had concussion, damaged my pelvis, cracked both my knees, cracked a bone in my foot. So multiple injuries, and I'd worked on traffic, so I knew if I saw anyone with the injuries and the accident I'd sort of experienced, that usually they wouldn't survive. But I was a bit of a tough cookie, and I did survive. Albeit on the way to hospital, I kind of slipped away for a few seconds, and they managed to revive me. And I had 12 operations over a period of, say, 4 years. I had, I think, 5 operations on my left wrist, one on each knee, two on my back, just lots of different operations, which helped me to sort of get me back to where I need to be. But for the next 8 years, I had to get my head around the fact that I was no longer this very physical, physically strong man. I couldn't just get up and do all the things I wanted to. In fact, I was registered disabled for 8 years. My memory had gone. So I would get up, I would decide I want to get, say, for example, a pair of socks. So I'd get up from my living room, get to the top of the stairs, and I wouldn't know why I was there. So I'd be confused and I'd probably get myself back downstairs. So my wife decided that anytime I decided I wanted to get something, she would write me a note. And the note would tell me exactly what I was going to do. So I'd get to the top of the stairs. Why am I here? Look at my hand. Pair of socks. And I'd get my pair of socks. That has changed my life because I took those things for granted. I took my health for granted. I took my mental health for granted. I took my memory for granted. All the things I did and had, I didn't really value them that much because I could do anything. I was so strong and fit, but this completely changed my life. And so for 8 years, I battled with the new version of myself, and that caused me to fall into a bit of a depression because I couldn't just go anywhere. I couldn't have conversations the way I wanted to. Um, I couldn't be the person I wanted to be. So I literally had to, I don't know, reinvent myself and transform. And so that transformation happened through me going back to university and retraining, and I got myself an art degree. Didn't know what I was going to do with my art degree because painters don't really make a lot of money whilst they're alive. So I thought, well, that's not really a good idea. And then I fell into the world of teaching, and I think that's where my life really, really began, because then I fell in love um, with teaching young people. I remember when I said to a friend of mine, I'm going to go into teaching. And initially, my idea was I want to teach the little ones, the primary school children, because they're so lovely and they're fine and they listen to you and they're so playful. And I remember a friend of mine. She said to me, "Well, she was a secondary school teacher." She said, "No, no, 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 no. Teach in a secondary school. They're adorable. They're like angels. They're so gorgeous." I thought, teenagers, teaching teenagers, my worst nightmare. But I listened to her advice, and I got myself a job in a secondary school. And surprisingly, I fell in love with teenagers. They were brilliant. They would listen to anything I told them. They were like sponges, and they were so desperate to learn, so desperate to um, identify who they really were and to be accepted. And what was nice about it, lots of the children I taught would always, especially the difficult, the challenging ones, they'd want to be in my lessons because they felt that they were listened to, they were heard, they were understood, and they could be themselves because I was fairly, I suppose, crazy. So they like that, and I fell in love with teaching, fell in love with just helping people to be themselves, and particularly that going through that transformational period that I went through, it really helped me to see children, young people who were stuck, who were disadvantaged for various reasons, and to kind of help them to get over that, to get through that through my personal journey. So that's the story so far. So do you want me to carry on?
Please do. Yes, of course. I just want to say thank you for opening up and sharing your story openly. I can only imagine how, like when you said you needed a note to just remember what you were about to do, and looking at you right now and having this conversation with you, and how much you are leaving an impact with kids and teenagers. You're leaving a legacy.
Yeah,
That's the transformation that you cannot basically show it. You have
yeah,
to feel it. and
yeah,
and
of course.
so um, what I'm the thing that is really coming into my mind is that what kind of thoughts were crossing your mind back then that gave you the power to be who you are today? Because I know that someone could hit rock bottom. What was rock bottom
Right. Wow.
that gave you
Rock.
the transformation?
You know, I remember my youngest son at the time, when I had my accident. He was, I think he was about 2 years old, and no, no, in fact, let me get that right. I think he was 18 months old. 18 months old, and I couldn't pick him up anymore. He was too heavy for me to hold and to carry. I used to wrestle with my older son. He was like 2 years older than my youngest, and I couldn't do that anymore. So that really hit me hard, because these two boys who were really, really vibrant, really energetic, in a sense, they were seeing their father, but they'd lost me,
Yeah.
because there's so many things I did with them that I couldn't do anymore. Um, just it really did change my life, and I'd got to a point where I don't think I ever thought of um, not wanting to be alive anymore. That I don't think I got to that point, but I certainly didn't see my value.
Wow.
You know, I lost um, my value, because my value was always in my strength, my physical strength, my my ability to overcome anything. And for a number of years, that strength was almost taken away from me. I didn't have it, and so I had to um, think about, okay, well, what can I do to really spend quality time with my boys? And initially, I'm going to say something you're not really going to agree with or like, but PlayStation was partly my
Love
savior.
PlayStation. I love PlayStation. Just tell me when and we got it. Nice choice.
Yeah, the PlayStation was amazing. I became, one of the best PlayStation players ever. I mean, people literally came to see me to play. It was it uh, Gran Turismo, which was a driving game, or rally driving games, any sort of driving games, or there was another game called Tekken. They really helped me. So Tekken was a fighting game. So I would play these games with my boys, and we spent quality time. I couldn't physically fight with them or wrestle them anymore, but we could fight on the PlayStation. I couldn't drive for a number of years, but I could show them how to drive on the PlayStation. We just had hours and I mastered all of the games. I was so good, and people would get their sons to come and try and challenge me, because their sons were the best, and I'd beat them. I was a legend again, um, and that and that really helped me. But the other thing that really helped me was when I started teaching in my secondary school. Strangely enough, I was put on the top floor of a three-story building. So imagine I'm physically disabled, and I've got to do that journey every day, probably 15, 20 times a day, up and down the stairs, because the toilets were on the ground floor. So there was no alternative. I had to keep going up and down the stairs, and then I had duties to do as well. So that really helped with my rehabilitation. Also, um, children are, and this is why I love teenagers. Teenagers, they don't really, they're not the most caring people, not really.
Mm.
They say what they think. Some a thought pops into their heads, and they'll say it because it at that time their main concern is themselves. They're
Do you
not really
really believe
thinking about.
that?
Sorry.
Can I just like interfere a little bit here?
Yeah, certainly.
So funny what you just said. So I believe it's the opposite. I believe that the teenagers are the most caring age group
Right.
before someone hits the maturity or the growth mindset growth between being kids or I think and I believe that they are the most caring. It's just
Right.
that they are not given the right space to express their care in the right or healthy way. They are always
Okay.
being left in a corner. Go do your homework, go watch out on your sister or brother. Not now, I'm busy, don't do this, don't do that. And then the teenager naturally was just gonna go back to his cocoon and express his frustration from not being able to express his care or their care with rebellious attitude.
Yeah. I do. Right. I will agree with what you're saying. And I think what you're saying is the reason why they are appear to be uncaring is the challenges and circumstances that they find themselves in. So I'll agree with that. What you're presented with, and I worked in a secondary school for 10 years
Mm,
with teenagers between the ages of 11 to 18 years, and what I was faced with were, in fact, I was ahead of year. My year group had 240 teenagers, all 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, um, and their biggest concern was themselves, their self-image, their work, um, just their friendship groups. They're quite at that age. They're quite insular. It is very much about me, and I know that prior to that, when you get say a newborn baby, between the newborn and the age of say 4 or 5, it's self-discovery. So they're very insular, and then they do come out of that period where they start to make friendship groups, and at that period they're not so much bothered about themselves. It's about their friends and the importance of being included, being thought of, being welcome, being loved, being liked, being understood. But the teenage years are really interesting
typical.
because
Typical, yeah.
they are trying to be heard, they are trying to be understood, and they are trying to care. But what you get is not what they so I hear what you're saying. They want to be really caring, so
Yeah.
I agree with that. But what you actually see is is not so much caring, and only because I've sat with hundreds of young people saying, look, you've got to care about each other a little bit more, or you need to care about your mother, or you need to care about your room, or you need to care about your work, and getting them to think differently. And I still work with a lot of teenagers who are in that stage. So I do agree that they're wanting to be
Mm,
um, the caring individual, but there are so many pressures that cause them to be cocooned in what we experience as um, uncaring, almost selfish individuals. But if you nurture that, and I've worked with young people who have been extremely aggressive, and yet when I've worked with them, all they wanted was for someone to listen to them,
yeah.
someone not to criticize or judge them. And suddenly you see, and I'm talking about really tough
Mm,
young men, 16-year-old young man who had been excluded from every school he attended and assaulted more teachers than I could count. But with me and my team, uh, he was able to be himself. And one of the first things he said to me is, look, what's written on paper about me isn't me. That's what people see, but that's not really me. And so, yeah, I think a lot of teenagers are fighting to be seen, to be heard, and that's really, really important.
It is very important, yes. So, Amando, given that you are in that area, working with
Yeah.
teenagers, I was a teenager before, but I wouldn't
So
really
was I, believe it or not.
I, I wouldn't really tell what was the problem because I can't see it when I used to be back then. But my
Yeah.
question would be this kind of behavior with teenagers, which is being aggressive, not listening, not having a proper or mature conversation,
Yeah.
less empathetic than usual. These kind of behaviors. Do you think the gap is because of their parents or the school? The full and open access more than fair or more than accepted to the internet, to TikToks, to Twitter, all of these things. What is the gap, and or what is the pressure that is affecting the teenagers' mental health? Because at the end of the day, we hear a lot of stories about teenagers either committing suicide or attempting to commit suicide, to run away from the house, to go for drugs or alcohol. So what is it really? Who's to blame? Let's put that
Wow.
question.
Well, I think that there are so many different pressures on teenagers. If you think about, so a teenager, I remember, I can remember when I was a teenager, just about. I had, I had so many pressures on me. I really wanted. I was desperate to be grown up. Really was. I would do everything I could to demonstrate that I was a grown up. So teenagers struggling with, they're in a really strange um, sort of
Yeah, because
position
they want
because
to
yeah,
know what their identity is. Who are they?
yeah, yeah. So they want to be grown ups, but they also want to be loved and nurtured. Okay, so you've got those two pulls, and then you've got the ones who the pressure of education. They
Hmm.
want to be the best and they want to achieve, but
They
they also
want
don't
to.
want.
That's the thing. Do they want to be the best in the
Yeah,
education, or they are forced to be? Not
they
everyone
you
wants
know
to be good in
no,
school.
no, no,
Some people just
no.
want to do something else.
Yeah, and I think yeah, you're right. I think there are some children who are pressured and feel that pressure, but a lot of the young people that I work with, and in fact, because I work with children who are sort of directed to me, so they don't come to me because they want to come to me.
Yeah.
They come to me because someone's told them, well, you need to turn up to spend some time with Amanda because he's going to help you. And initially, I will get a lot of opposition. They won't want to be with me until, we spend a little bit of time and they realize, well, actually, this is for me. And they realize actually in order to get to where they want to be, there are certain things they've got to learn how to do. And so
Mm-hmm.
when they realize they have that realization, then it becomes something that they want to. They then begin to own that desire to be the best version of themselves. Um, but in schools are really tough place to
Yeah.
exist because most schools on average have between and if we just talk about the teenage school years, the smallest secondary school that I'm aware of has about 750. I'm talking about mainstream school, 750 students, and the larger schools will have something like 2,000, 1,800 to 2,000 students, all competing for the same goal, which is to get um, good GCSEs. Yeah. Now that sort of pressure is huge. Along with that comes the pressure of failing not only themselves but their teachers, because their teachers believe in them. Not only failing themselves and their teachers but their peers, because if my peer achieves this grade, they'll go to this college or university. If I don't get that, well, I won't be able to go to the same place as my peer, my friend, and so they're worried about losing that friendship. And then there's the pressure from parents, because parents just want their children to do well, and the idea is that when you have children, ideally you want your children to do better than you, because you've gone through your own struggles, but you want them to do better. So the pressures kind of it's meant with the right intention, but
But the wrong
sometimes
intention.
it comes out in the wrong way. And
You
I
know,
remember my sorry my I'll let you make your point in a second, if that's okay. My youngest son was always a real bright spark. Okay, really intelligent. I admired him because he was so intelligent. And then he got to a point where he got through school, did really well at school, went through college, got really good grades at college, and then he applied to do a course at university, and he was about to start his university degree and said, "Dad, I don't want to do the degree." I said, "What do you want to do?" He said, "I just want to work with you." I said, "Okay, that's fine. You can work with me." And then the following year, he applied to a different university to do a different course. And just before this course was due to start, he said, "Dad, I don't want to do this course. It's not for me." And we did that. He did that 3 times, and then finally, he got a course that he felt was really him.
yeah.
And so that process is really difficult. And what I did was stood back and allowed him to be whatever he wants to be. And he's doing a course that he'll be qualified as a social worker. He loves working with children and just people. He loves work. In fact, at one point, he thought about becoming a teacher because he just wants to work with people. He loves people. Um, and so I think it's really important for parents to allow their children to explore the things that they really enjoy. And it may be. I remember when I told my father that I wanted to be an artist. His response was, "Well, you won't ever make any money while you're alive." And
That's a
it kind of
self-limiting belief right
squashed.
there.
Sorry.
That's a limiting belief right there.
Exactly, but it affected me, and so
Mhm.
I didn't really have a lot of value for my ability as an artist. But I use my art in everything I do now. So there's just not one dimension for a skill set that you may have. So whatever they enjoy, they should be allowed to do. And I found that the more I enjoy something, the better I am at it. And the more I enjoy it, the better I am, the better experience everyone around me has.
Mhm.
So really important. When a young person says this is what I enjoy, help them to embrace it,
Let them.
you know?
So, what would be like, how could parents be better in parenting?
Listen,
Yeah,
listen,
yeah.
listen. And one of the skills that I advocate as a coach is listening. And I think just in life in general, um, I'm a good talker. I can talk forever. Um, and one of the skill, yeah. We both talk a lot. I've spotted that. One of the skills that I've had to learn is how to listen. And I think if children are listened to, um, surprisingly, they grow because they're allowed to be heard.
Mm.
And most, I mean, I wrote an article, and it was relating to Edvard Munch's The Scream. And at the time, it was about the hidden scream that we had. And lots of individuals, not just teenagers, men or women, but lots of individuals have this inner scream where they just need to be heard. And in fact, if I listen to you, I don't. if I'm listening to you, you don't need to scream. Currently, the other thing that I forgot to mention that I'm also a therapeutic foster carer. So children who are who have lots of difficulties will be placed with me. My wife's the main carer, and we currently have a little 5-year-old who will shout. She's only small, but she's the loudest in the household. She's tiny, but she's so loud. And 9 times out of 10, I will say to her, "Look, we are listening to you. We can hear you. All you've got to do is just talk, and we'll listen." And then she breathes.
You reminded me of a video that went really viral. A parent who, a dad, holding his daughter, and she's crying. She's throwing tantrums, and she's never nonstop crying, and her crying is only getting stronger and more intense for hours. All he did was just sit with her in silence and hold the space.
Yeah,
After like a couple of hours, he remained calm, and then she hugged him and slept.
yeah,
I was what like, wow. Which brings us to the importance of mindfulness, being able to hold the space, being able to release your emotions without hurting yourself or hurting anyone around you, and teaching it or passing it on to our kids. There's a
yeah,
school, I don't remember in which country, instead of grounding or punishing the children when they do something wrong in school, they get a 1 hour of meditation.
yeah. I've seen that. Yeah,
I love that.
brilliant. Yeah,
So, what's your take on this? What do you think?
good grief. Yeah, we actually we've been teaching the little 5-year-old we have to meditate actually, to have that space
Yeah.
to calm. She'll have a 2 minute um of in a Zen zone, we call it, and she's got a little princess sort of
Oh,
pyramid tent, and she goes in there and will say, just all you need is 2 minutes,
yeah.
just breathe, and then when you're ready, you come back down, and she'll sit,
Of course.
and she might sit with her legs sort of crossed, and or she might lie on her tummy, and she'll just for 2 minutes, or sometimes she just falls asleep because she's really tired.
Tired.
She's just really tired, and then she'll come down. And I'll say, "Are you feeling better now?" Yeah. So what was that all about? I don't know.
Yeah, I love
But
that.
and children, they have. Look, I'm a grown man, and there are times when I'm anxious about things that
Yeah.
I can't articulate. Children have so many different factors that are thrust upon them. Some that are from their surroundings, some because of expectations that are placed on them, some from their own fears, their own anxieties that they're completely, I don't know, incapacitated by.
Mm.
And all they need is that space to think, to be calm, to be heard, to be understood, to be valued, and that will change their perspective. And guaranteed, lots of children would love to just sit in my classroom. So my break times, just remembering back, I didn't really have a break time because or lunch, because students would be knocking on my door at the end of the lesson. Can we spend our break in your room, sir?
Brilliant.
Why? Well, it's really calm. I
Okay.
would get
So
in.
basically, I'm just trying to take the takeaways,
Yeah,
the space for your children,
yeah,
listen to them,
absolutely.
and lead by example.
Yeah, yeah. They need to, and it's telling that sometimes you've got to talk them through and say, look, I'm listening to you so that you can be heard.
So teach them the language Tell them what's
Absolutely,
going on. Okay.
absolutely.
Interesting. That's
That
interesting.
dialogue is critical. And the minute you start talking to children, I don't like shouting at
Yeah.
children.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I remember, again, going back to my teaching days, um, when children would be lining up outside of my room. My classes were always immaculate because it was Mr. Brown's room, and not because I was so strict, but I had standards. And I said, look, when you're waiting outside my room, I expect you to be quiet. I expect you to be respectful. Otherwise, you will not be coming to my room.
Values.
And when you do come into my room, I expect everything to be in order.
Yeah.
And then we can have a fun lesson. And then we're crazy for an hour. And at the end of the lesson, we put everything back, we get ourselves in order, and then you leave quietly to go on to your next lesson.
Follow the
And
rules,
so
respect the boundaries, and let's have fun.
absolutely. And you know what? Learning, this is the final thing. Learning has got to be fun.
Yes.
It must be. It must be. I learn best when I'm having fun. Okay.
100%.
I'm at my best when I'm enjoying myself. So even more so for
100%.
children.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Amando. That was fun. So anything else you'd like to add before we end the show?
Well, the only thing I would say is, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. It's been an absolute pleasure. Wonderful speaking to you. You've helped me to learn a few things and to really think about teenagers even more. So you give me another perspective that I don't think I fully captured before our meeting today. So honestly, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amando. Until next episode, take care and don't forget to share and subscribe. Bye bye.
Thank you.